This episode is sponsored by
Chivalry!
2. I'm Kerry Stagmer, and we are the Blacksmiths of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite things and fantastic objects you've never seen before. This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged.
Today on Man-at-Arms, we'll be working with Chivalry 2. This game is absolutely amazing. You know, these are all the same kind of weapons that we build on a regular basis. So we decided to build one that's really very different. We're going to be making the Royal Maciejowski Messer. This is a huge weapon. If you go to the Morgan Bible and take a good look at it, you'll see that it's depicted in many forms, from a single one-hander to a fairly large chopping weapon. We're going to be making something very special and much larger.
To flatten this big round stock, the guys are going to be going to the hydraulic press to start with. You'll see that there are people on each side of the press. That's primarily because we've got a control system that requires you to have both hands on the machine. That's, obviously to keep your hands from getting caught underneath. It's a good safety precaution, and for something this large, we've actually got, obviously, the third person is carrying the material itself, bringing it in. We're going to press this down to the bar form. From there, we'll be able to go to the power hammer. We call creating the bar in the hydraulic press blanking the material down or breaking the material down. Now that it's in bar form, Derek is going to be able to go to the power hammer and begin to make the sword blank. There's only a limited amount of time where we can keep the heat in this bar to keep forging it. It'll begin to cool off and we're going to have to go back to the forges. Normally it just takes 3 or 4 heats for a standard blade, but when you get into something big and fantastic like this, it can take a really long time. Sometimes when we have a sword or an object under the hammer that's so big one person can't control it, somebody will come in this case Decker will come in and give a stabilizing hand with another pair of tongs on the power hammer. It takes a fair amount of skill to do this because you have to know what the other person is trying to create as you go. The power hammer is a free-forming tool. The press has a die set in it that allows us to basically get this more refined, flatten it out, and get to a nice even thickness. Decker will now go back to the hydraulic press and get this thing nice and even, and then we're going to work on getting it straight. Really, no matter how many tools you have, the big machines at some point don't quite get the forms that you need. Derek's going to go back to using a sledgehammer just to refine it, straighten it, and get a good feel for the direction he wants to go to create this sword. Anytime we're creating a blade quite this large, it's going to take more than one guy. It really is one of those things where you expend all your energy, and if you have a second set of hands, you can probably work 3 or 4 times as long.
Now that they've finished drawing out this massive piece of steel, Derek's going to go to the power hammer to freeform it. To draw it out quickly, he's going to be using a bottom fuller. It's locked onto the bottom die, and then the upper die strikes as the hammer would normally work. This is going to allow him to spread material in the direction he needs and move it very quickly.
just to make sure that I had the scale right, I did cut out a template in thin sheet metal. That really let me make sure that when we make this blade, not only will it conform to the size and shape that we need to fit in the guard, but that it'll stay symmetrical.
Alright, so we've got this sword basically rough shaped out. Decker and I are going to heat this guy up now. And I'm going to be forging the end of this. We're going to draw this point out and we're going to create the hook that's at the tip of the sword. After that, we're going to heat the rest of the blade up and we're going to draw the edge the whole way along the blade. We're going to work the entire length of the edge with Decker and get this ready to grind.
In truth, we actually make a lot of these huge messers in this form. It's one of those things that really is requested by a lot of customers. We make them in 3 sizes. We make a small, a medium, and a large. And the large, I think, is pretty big. It has a 28-inch blade. This has a 45-inch blade. This thing is huge. Now that we have this huge blade forged, it's one of the things that it's just a little bit too big for anybody to handle at the grinders. So Decker's going to be able to go in and help Bill. So they'll basically trade off, and Bill's going to guide how the piece is ground, and Decker is going to support it. And once again, it seems like, anybody could just be standing there holding one end. But it's not like that, because every little movement that Bill makes, he needs Decker to kind of mirror that, or he just won't be able to control the blade. These two guys are pros. Now that the blade is brought up to a fairly even temperature, about 1500 degrees, where we can quench it and it'll harden, we're going to be quenching it into oil in this tank. It might seem like the blade is longer than the tank, but the tanks actually go several feet into the ground. This allows us to basically be able to stand right in front of the tank and still be able to put these huge swords in, and it keeps the temperature of the oil at a constant, because it's down in the ground and it uses the mass of the ground to maintain the temperature of the oil. So when we do multiple blades, things don't get overheated. Now that we have the blade heat treated and the size of the tang is locked in, we know what we need it to be, we can go to the milling machine and cut a slot. That slot will be where the tang goes through, And once we've got that done, Kevin's going to be able to take it and forge out the rest of the form.
Kerry just finished machining a slot in here to fit on our big sword, and that means it's ready to go in the fire, be drawn down, brought to shape, and hopefully it'll fit.
So as you can see from this already, I've already gone on one side, polished the flat up to a high grit, and roughed out the edge a bit more. Now we're going to take this and I'm going to do it to the other side. Go through, rough it out, do the flats, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kerry to do the edge.
Now that Bill's gotten this entire sword ground for me, I'm going to be able to just take it from him, get some polishing and some final tweaking of the piece, we'll get it assembled, and get out there to the battleground.
Click here to subscribe, or click here to see more episodes. Thanks for watching Man-at-Arms Reforged. We need to know what you want the team to build. Tell us in the comments below what you would like to see.
We'd like to thank Chivalry 2 for sponsoring this episode.